How objections have technically been defined in the world of online marketing, online business, and advertising is a fear or anxiety that needs to be tackled or overcome. Ew, no. Even worse, we've been taught that an objection is any reason that a person would not buy our product. There are many times where buying our offer, our product may not be the right decision for a person, so that is certainly not the right way to look at handling an objection. Hi, I'm Brittany McBean, a launch strategist and copywriter, and I specialize in copy that converts without making people feel like they need to take a shower. When it comes to what we write in our sales copy, our job is to help someone make a clear yes or no decision that they are confident in and make them feel seen, heard, known, and understood. Because even if our copy does compel someone to hit that buy button, I personally do not find refund requests or completely unused content to be a huge success. So instead, I would like to define an objection as a hesitation or a resistance that deserves to be heard, validated, and respected, not overcome or tackled or discouraged. I've recently read a book that I'm obsessed with. It's called Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell, and it really examines the foundational language present in almost all cult systems and how transformative and harmful and impactful it is in allowing people to slowly take steps to enter into a circumstance that is really not what is in their best interest. In her book, she talks a lot about loaded language, which is kind of just a catch-all for a lot of the language that we use in cults or cult-ish circumstances. And one prime example of loaded language is a thought-terminating cliche. The term thought-terminating cliche actually first popped up in a man named Robert J. Lifton's book in 1961, so it's been around for a while, but Amanda Montell talks about it and really shows us how it is present, not just in the more traditionally defined cults, but also in our online marketing. A thought-terminating cliche is a response or a phrase that you would use to completely stop a line of thinking, eliminate critical thinking, and prevent someone from continuing their thought even further. Basically, it's a way of invalidating a feeling and ending an argument without allowing room for a person's thoughts or feelings. And quite frankly, they are phrases that mean absolutely nothing and therefore prevent the conversation from continuing because you can't really have a conversation with nonsensical talk. So for example, just calling something fake news is a thought-terminating cliche. Where do you go from there? My favorite, and by favorite, I mean the one that I hate the most, is everything happens for a reason. How do you continue to talk about your trauma if somebody just told you everything happens for a reason? Telling someone that what they're experiencing is a mindset issue. You can't work through something if it's just something that's wrong with your head. Telling someone, you can't afford not to do this. If someone just told you that they can't afford something, there is a conversation to be had there. Just saying you can't afford not to do this is a thought-terminating cliche. Saying, that's just an excuse. It's kind of the same as like mindset thing, but just telling someone that their circumstance is an excuse is again a thought-terminating cliche. And what I think is quite possibly the most overused and honestly the worst thought-terminating cliche is by calling someone's objection or problem or circumstance or challenge a limiting belief. If your belief is limited, then you are the problem and there's nothing I can do to help you. Thought-terminating cliches shut down the conversation, turn the problem back around on you and say, this is up to you to fix. I've got my shit together. You're the one with the problem. You will never hear me use the word limiting belief in copy or messaging unless I am just making fun of it because I think it is the most disrespectful way we can refer to someone else's thought or experience. We have been taught that someone's resistance or hesitation or fear or anxiety is something to be tackled, like literally tackled to the ground, or overcome, not heard or respected. We are taught to respond with a thought-terminating cliche, a phrase that says, the wall is up. This is up to you to figure out. Once you have your shit together, then you can come on in, then we can work through this. And it also completely invalidates any reason that someone would have for not buying our product. If someone cannot afford your offer, if someone is not the right person for your offer, if someone is not in a circumstance or a place or a time in their life where they can actually consume your content, take advantage of the features, and go through the transformation, how easy is it to say that's a mindset issue, that's an excuse, that's a limiting belief, when in reality, those are very real reasons someone should not buy our program. All right, we're gonna get a little technical and a little psychological for a moment, and I don't just mean like sales psychology, because that can kind of be gross, but I wanted to find two words that are overused and highly pathologized all around the internet. The first one is trauma. So for the purposes of this video and how I usually talk about trauma, trauma is an event or a series of events that makes it difficult to deal with overwhelming emotions or circumstances, even if it doesn't directly correlate with the original event. The next one is the word trigger or triggering. So when someone has been triggered or something is a trigger or triggering, that means that there's a stimulus that has created a fight, flight, or freeze response, or just an overwhelming sense of anxiety. So if someone's trauma can cause them to be triggered, and triggered means that they now go into a sense of fight, flight, or freeze, and the words that we use can traumatize, re-traumatize, or trigger someone. What we are doing when we respond with a thought-terminating cliche, with invalidating someone's experience or their very real concerns, fears, hesitations, or anxieties, is we send them into a sense of fight, flight, or freeze. None of those look like making a buying decision and going through a transformation in your program. They are either actively resisting, fighting, they are just running away, or they are just standing there frozen, which means they're either going to not do anything, or they're going to look at your countdown timer, feel a heightened sense of anxiety, freak out, hit buy, and then regret it the next morning and ask for a refund. I want to talk about what might actually be going through someone's mind when they are in the middle of making a buying decision. Chances are, if you're selling an online course, program, coaching program, they are not just buying a product. They're not in line to buy a tie or buying cigarettes like everyone was advertising in the 80s, which is where all of this advertising bullshit came from. And they're not just buying a t-shirt. They're not just making a small, low-risk buying decision. They're actively trying to decide whether they are ready to make a change or not. You are selling a transformation. They are either trying something that's not working or not doing anything at all. So they now have to make a change from that other solution or that inertia to your solution and your program, and then make the active change of going through the transformation. When someone is contemplating making a change, this is all scientifically based. It's founded in research and psychology, and this is based on a therapeutic model, but I'm not going to get too technical here because I'm not an expert. When someone is making a change, actively deciding whether they're ready to make a change or not, they're experiencing ambivalence. Ambivalence means that they're feeling two things at once. They are at the same time simultaneously thinking about the pros of staying the same, because there's a lot of pros with not making change. Change is hard. Versus the cons of staying the same, because sometimes staying the same isn't what's best for us, while also weighing the pros of making a change and the cons of making a change. They are feeling those things simultaneously, which means that we have to meet them where they are, because the second we try to eliminate their ambivalence, invalidate it, we are going to be met with resistance and defensiveness, and that means no buying. So there are two very common go-to responses that we usually have for someone contemplating making a change, and both of these are completely inappropriate responses and lead to nothing but resistance. The wall immediately goes up, they lose trust in you as their coach, as their mentor, and they also are now too defensive to make a buying decision. So the two completely inappropriate responses for someone actively determining whether they're ready to make a change or not are persuasion. That's right. I said it. Everyone loves talking about persuasion psychology. Well, it doesn't really work when you're selling a big transformation. Persuasion and the righting reflex. Let's break those down. We often respond in two ways when we're trying to persuade someone to make a change. And both of those ways will cause that wall to go up and cause resistance. So when we try to persuade someone about the urgency in making a change or the benefits of making that change, it is actually going to cause defensiveness and resistant. I know that sounds crazy, completely antithetical to everything you've heard. We're supposed to convince people, right? We need to convince them why this is best for them. How does it work when you tell your kid what to do? Just let me know how that works for you. I have a 4-year-old, and the second I say, go get your shoes on, I can tell you the last thing in the world that she's going to do is get her shoes on. If I say, get your shoes on, we have to get out the door right now, it is now going to take 20 minutes. And if I say, if we can't go anywhere until you have your shoes on, or your feet are going to be cold if you don't have your shoes on, she just realized that there's some leverage. She's now in control. We're not going anywhere. I know that your readers and your customers are not 4-year-olds. When was the last time someone told you what to do? You were having a hard time deciding whether to leave a job or to go in and ask for a raise or to start your business or to start running ads or to change up your program or whatever the hell it is. The last time you were making something that felt like a really big decision and someone said, you have to do this. This is the only way to do it. This is the reason to do it. How did that feel? I'm going to bet it didn't feel really good. People do not like being told what to do on a primal level. So when you try to convince someone why they need to make this change and make it quickly, and all the good things that happen when they make this change, and that's like the first message you lead with, the wall is up, they're out. The bottom line is, yes, when it comes to making low-risk buying decisions, persuasion works. When it comes to making a change, persuasion is not an effective mechanism in your messaging, and it will backfire 10 times out of 10. And the writing reflex, oh my God, I will drop someone faster in my life than a hot potato if they try to solve a problem in my life. The writing reflex means using our corrective lens to tell someone what they should do, trying to fix someone's problem for them. Trigger warning for just a moment. I want to share a little bit about my experience with pregnancy loss. I know that this is very, very, very intense and completely off the cuff, but while I was trying to conceive and we were experiencing multiple miscarriages, every person I talked to, except for maybe the two closest people in my life, told me what they did after they had a miscarriage, what doctor I needed to go see, what medical condition I might have, what herbs I should be taking, what food I should eat, what shots I could be getting, what tracking regimen I could get on. Everyone tried to fix my problem. And when I was actively losing children while trying to grow my family, the last thing in the world that I needed was someone who had no idea about my life circumstances, about my health, about my story, and was not my medical professional, giving me medical advice to fix my miscarriages. I know that's really intense, but you need to know that the people who are determining whether they're going to buy your product or not are probably having some sort of pretty heavy crisis, whether it is weight loss, whether to give up on their business, whether it is a parenting crisis or challenge that they're having. They're experiencing something that is pretty meaningful to them. It's keeping them up at night. And the second you come in and tell them what to do without any context of their life and their circumstance and their thoughts and their feelings and what they have tried, man, you are writing yourself off in their book. They are done. They are out. They are unsubscribed. They want nothing to do with you. And if you are walking around giving people advice, I mean, honestly, just about anything, if you're someone who likes to give advice, please stop. Your friends hate it. They just want you to say, oh my God, that sucks so much. Do you want cookies or brownies? Just stop giving advice to your friends, to your family, to your students. It's not a good look. Okay. So what can we as marketers do to address fears, hesitations, challenges, and anxieties that people are having without causing defensiveness, without causing resistance, without triggering or re-traumatizing or invalidating their lived experience? Your job is not to change their behaviors. I don't care if you're a coach. I don't care if you're a life coach. I don't care if this pisses you off and it goes against everything you've ever been taught. Your job is not to change their behavior. You have to know that every time you sit down to write your copy. Your job is to know and understand that change comes from your reader's intrinsic motivation. If it does not come from internal motivation, it's going to either cause resistance or buyer's remorse or a completely unused content and a lack of transformation, which means you have no social proof, no case studies, and people are like, yeah, I took this person's course, it didn't really do anything. You have to acknowledge that the desire to persuade and that the writing reflex is completely ingrained in your body and it is going to come up. I do it all the time. You're going to want to give advice. You're going to want to solve someone's behavior. Your job is to know that that's there, know that you're going to see through that lens, know that it's going to come up, and actively make the decision to override it, to step aside and say, I'm focusing on that person. I'm focusing on hearing what they're really, really saying and listening to them, whether it is on a webinar, whether it is just speaking to them in a sales page. You are focusing on that person, not what you can say to fix them. Okay, so what does this actually look like in copy? Well, I'm going to give you a couple like litmus tests or filters and then some examples about what this could actually look like in copy. The number one thing you have to know is that whatever you are saying, you're not making this shit up out of the top of your head. You are having active conversations, whether it is surveys, feedback forms, embedded surveys in your program, once a year survey, however you are connecting with your people, DMing with them. I don't DM with people because I have major ADHD and I cannot continue on a conversation for longer than 5 minutes. So it's not where I get my market research. You are having phone calls with them. You're actively engaging with them in the coaching in your program, and you're taking note of the questions that they're having. You're really listening to your people. This comes from actively engaging and listening to your ideal people and understanding what's going on in their life, so that when you sit down to have a conversation in your sales copy, even though it is one way because you are writing, they are reading, they are still feeling like they're having a true, friendly, genuine, honest, transformative conversation with someone who deeply cares about them. Okay, so you can address their ambivalence. Actively validate, address the pros of staying the same. Yeah, that's right. You can tell someone, guess what? It's a lot easier to do nothing. And that's not shameful. We're not shaming them saying, well, you could just do nothing. That's what lazy people do. Saying like, oh, I get it. I'd much rather sit on my couch than run a 5K. Someone told me that, I'd be like, yes, absolutely. Come sit on my couch with me. Let's eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's, and then maybe we can talk about running, right? Validate the pros of staying the same and the cons of changing. You have to start there because they are already there. And then you can talk about the cons of staying the same and the pros of changing, while gradually throughout your funnel and throughout your messaging, putting more emphasis on the pros of changing. Meet them where they are. Do not pretend like their hesitation, their anxiety, their resistance doesn't exist, because it does. So the second you pretend like it's not there, or you're like, oh, we don't talk about fear, we don't talk about limiting beliefs, well, then that means you just completely invalidated about half of your reader's lived experience. That's not a great way to start a trusting relationship. So like, for example, in sales copy, you could say something like, it's a lot easier. Look, I'm feeling like a lot of shame about all the weight I've gained in COVID. That's where I'm going with. It's not because I'm like all into diet culture or working with a weight loss client. This is just where my head is right now, okay? So you could say something like, yeah, it's a lot easier to not get back into working out. It's really difficult to start up a routine, especially with a young child at home, especially with COVID and all the anxieties and protocols. It's a lot easier to not get back in that habit. And then you could even say something like, maybe your body is just telling you you need to rest, or validating the pro of staying the same, or pro of not changing. You can say, maybe you just really need the rest. So make sure that you're getting the rest. Make sure that you've honored what your body needs. But at the same time, the next 5 years are going to pass anyway. They're going to happen no matter what. So as you start to think about the rest that you need, where would you like to be in 5 years? How would you like to use that time? Because they're going to pass no matter what. So is there something that you could do between now and then that could maybe actively lead towards the life that you want to be living in 5 years, and maybe not a continuation of the things that you're not really thrilled with about your life? That's really wordy. I know that would have to be like copy edited, but do you see how validating that is, and how empathetic that is, and how that validates all the resistance that they have and puts emphasis on the pro of changing? How would you feel if you read that copy? The next thing you can do is really focus in your copy on the collaboration and the co-creation built on mutual trust. So rather than telling them how much they need you, why don't you go ahead and show them how they are already qualified to succeed? Why are they so perfectly set up to succeed that this time it's going to be different because of what they already have, because of what you have inside this program, and how when you work together and collaborate with how exclusively and wonderfully qualified they are and all of the resources and tools you have, that they can get what they need. Show them that your offer meets them right where they are. They don't have to be somewhere else. You two are meeting at the same place and you're walking forward together. Build trust by showing them who your program is right for and who it is really not right for. Again, go back to those fears and anxieties. If you can't afford this, if you can't take the next 6 months to do this, if you're not ready, and for God's sake, please do not do some reverse psychology shaming bullshit where it's like, you're not right for this if you don't want to be better. You're not right for this if you don't like to save money. Ugh, that's gross. Don't do that. So for example, your copy could say something like, you've done all of the hard work to get where you are. You are resourceful. You are innovative. You are resilient. The fact that you were even reading this, the fact that you are the person who is reading this content right now, you wouldn't say that in copy, but shows me that you already have everything it takes. You've just been never given the tools to do X, or no one's ever taught you X. If you had all of your resourcefulness and innovation and resilience and you combined it with these tools, how amazing would you be? That's sales copy. Okay. The next one is a little hard to do in a one-way conversation like copy, but it's so important. If you can draw out their ideas, right? This isn't about inception. This isn't making them think that your idea is their idea, but it's allowing them to walk through a train of thought so that they are the ones convincing themselves that they need to be inside your program. You're not the one persuading them to buy. You are drawing out their ideas. So for example, you could ask a question like, when was the last time you had success? Right? And so maybe you like have that in a one-way conversation and somebody shares something with you and you're like, boom, light bulb, that's going in the copy. And then in the copy, you can say, maybe in the past, it's been really hard to have success when you're just using an app or just using a free tool or just bought a DIY course, right? You're allowing them to be like, yeah, maybe why that didn't work for me. Maybe that wasn't the best fit for me. And then you can ask an open-ended question like, what would it be like if you had someone to walk you through this step by step, who was an expert in their field, but also knew exactly what it was like to be where you are? That's not exactly an open-ended question. I know that's a little leading, but because you've asked open-ended questions in your market research, you can have those more leading conversations in your copy that allows someone to be like, yes, that's what I want. They are the ones having the idea, not you. Focus on their autonomy. How do you feel? How did you feel when you were grounded as a teenager? Maybe you were better than me, but I was always grounded and I was just locked in my room, not like locked, but you know what I mean. And I felt so frustrated, so helpless, so completely out of control. I felt powerless and angry. How does my kid react when I say you get what you get and you don't throw a fit? No one likes having their autonomy taken away from them. If you can focus on their autonomy in your copy, you're going to lower the wall down, and rather than preventing someone from making a buying decision, you're going to create the trust that they need to join your program or buy your offer. So for example, if you said something like, the choice is totally yours. There's no pressure coming from me. I want you to make the decision that is best for you, and only you know what that is. These are the 3 questions you could ask yourself, and if the answer to these 3 questions is no or whatever, then this may not be right for you. The decision is completely yours. If you have any questions, if you need some more information, go ahead and hit reply. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'm just going to answer your questions, but I'm not going to try to persuade you to join this program. Boom. Focus on their autonomy. Give them their autonomy back. You're going to have more people inside your offer. Leading with empathy is going to be huge. If you can validate their feelings while maybe invalidating some of the really harmful messages that they've heard before, and you can really put their emotions and feelings first and step inside their shoes and lead with empathy, you're going to connect on such a deep level. So for example, what if you told someone in your sales copy, what if you're not playing small? What if you're just introverted? What if you're just tired? What if you're just burnt out? What if you're not playing small, but you're just doing what you need to mentally survive right now? That is much better than the shaming message of stop playing small, it's time to play a bigger game. Fuck that. And the last thing that you can do, and I think that this could very easily tip into the shaming territory, so you need to be responsible and careful, is develop discrepancy. So if they are actively expressing that they have a core value, and you'll know this because you're doing your market research, if your people have a core value, but the way that they are living or acting or doing is maybe in opposition with that value, you can gently address that discrepancy. So for example, let's say you have a course on all about how to build a team, and you know that your people are hiring people at a very, very, very low cost overseas and just like running them ragged and everybody's miserable. You can say, hey, if you really value having a positive company culture, but your team is always burnt out because you've hired a bunch of task rabbits at a very low rate to do things that they're unqualified for, or maybe they're not being paid to do, they're going to consistently be frustrated. And that's not your fault because no one's taught you how to grow your team. But if you really develop this culture and what you're doing is in alignment with that, this might be a really great way to start lining yourself up with that value. See how that works? Or even just something as simple as like, yeah, being able to play with your grandkids is a top priority for you, but right now with the back pain you're feeling, you're not able to do that. And it's not your fault that your back is hurt, but what if there were some things that you can do so that those core memories that you want to be making right now in this season of your life can be a top priority for you, and your pain isn't the thing that's top of mind. All right, that was really heady. I just threw a lot of shit at you. If you hear nothing else, come back to me. I'm going to give you a litmus test for your messaging. This goes a little bit beyond objections, but if your messaging can pass this test, then you are handling your objections responsibly without triggering or re-traumatizing or shaming someone and disrespecting their actual lived experience, life circumstance, and very valid emotions. So, responsible messaging is truthful. You mean what you say and you say what you mean. You're not pulling gimmicks. You're not trying to pretend like your webinar is live. You're not trying to pretend like this evergreen funnel actually ends. You're just telling them like it is, not in like some weird Maury, like I just tell it like it is and everybody hates me, I'm just telling the truth way. In the way that you're being transparent and honest. You mean what you say and you say what you mean. This one's a big one for me. Your message is responsible if it is in alignment with your values, even if your values suck. If they do, you're probably not someone watching this video, and that's okay. But People deserve, your readers, your listeners, your audience deserves to vote with their dollars. If you voted for Trump, if you are a QAnon diehard, if you do not believe in reproductive rights, if you do not believe that people in the LGBTQ plus community should have rights, whatever hot button you want to pick, if you do not believe that Black Lives Matter, I would say that you're a garbage human, but that's just me. But you better let people know that, so that people know that they are giving someone like that money, because they may want to give you money, and they may love that you donate to pro-life and anti-gay places, and they may want to put their money there. But if you don't tell them that, then someone who actively does not agree with those values is putting their money into the pockets of someone who is spending money harming people that they care about. So again, this probably doesn't apply to anyone who's listening. I know I'm preaching to the choir. If your values suck, if your values are amazing, whatever they are, you need to be transparent with them so that people know who and what they are supporting. All right, next one's a little lighter, but equally as important. Your message is responsible if it is specific and cannot apply to another circumstance, another program, another solution. If you're just walking around telling someone that they're finally going to have success or they're going to live their best life, someone doesn't know what they're buying. They might buy into a big promise that they didn't actually want. But if you can tell them very, very specifically, I'm going to help you buy your first house. I'm going to help you buy your first rental property. I'm going to help you have the birth story you've always wanted. I don't know, pick a thing. If you can apply your copy to someone else's copy or someone else's program, it's not specific enough, it's not responsible enough, go back in, get more granular, get more specific. You are being responsible with your messaging if your copy, your words, your message that you are sharing applies to someone with a different lived experience than you. That does not mean not having a niche. You do not have to speak to everyone. You don't have to be for everyone. But if your copy or the messaging you're sharing or your offer only works for someone who is born with privilege, born with affluence, born with access, born with a certain skin color, born in with a certain gender, then it is not responsible. Your message can be niched, it can be specific, it can be for a small group of people, but it has to apply to people who look, live, and love differently than you. So run it through that filter. And if all the shit you're saying and all the ways that you're telling people they can do this really only applies if you're born a middle-class white man or a middle-class white woman or live in the suburbs or whatever that is, then you might want to go back in and take generational poverty, take being displaced from your home because you're a part of the LGBTQ community, having systemic oppression, having systemic racism. You might want to go back in and take that stuff into account or run your messaging through that filter. Okay, your messaging is responsible if it does not intentionally or even unintentionally raise stress and cortisol levels. If you're trying to stress people the hell out with your urgency and scarcity, stop it, go to your room, don't do it, it's not nice. And finally, your messaging is responsible if it does not use shame, guilt, manipulation, or triggering words to influence a buying decision. If you find yourself trying to guilt someone, trying to shame someone, trying to manipulate someone into a buying decision, then either you don't have a good offer, or you're not speaking to the right people, or you're just using unnecessary sales techniques. Your offer is probably amazing because you're amazing, right? Now I'm the one being shaming. But if you have to manipulate someone into buying your offer, you might want to go back and rethink that. Focus on giving them the information they need so that they can take their fears, hesitation, anxieties, lay it over top with the information you're giving them, weigh the pros and cons of making a change for themselves, and make a confident buying decision. I know the way we talk about objections in sales copy isn't going to go away. I would just really encourage you to maybe look at it through this lens and consider the fact that you're not asking someone to make a low-risk decision. Whether your offer is $100, $200, $25,000, you are still asking someone to make a transformation, which means they are going to need to make decisions differently than all the ways you've been taught to persuade someone that really only applied to products that were being sold in the 1950s. I'm happy to do a whole nother video on that, but that is the reality of it. So how do you figure out where your messaging comes from? You know the answer, say it with me, market research. It's what I preach from the pulpit every week, and by pulpit I mean video. So I have a freebie for you. If you want to just swipe my market research process that we use for our clients, how I gather the data, how I analyze the data, and how I turn that data and that messaging into actual copy that converts, go ahead and download that free resource. You're gonna have an entire system and spreadsheet and process for grabbing market research for your business so that you can turn that research into really responsible messaging that makes you money and actually transforms your students' lives. All right, if you wanna see more ranting and rambling from a lunatic, that's me. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up so that I know you like it, the algorithm knows you like it, and go ahead and hit subscribe so that you don't miss the next video coming up next week. All right, I'll see you then.